Hello, welcome to Fiber Trek. My name is Sarah. Welcome. You are most welcome to my creative studio space here in northern Maine. Thank you so much for all that choose to invest some time in following this project. I always appreciate to hear from you and your insight, and a special deep heartfelt thank you to those that invest financially through Patreon. I find that support especially motivating and encouraging, as well as humbling. On this edition, I want to share with you a couple different experiments I've done with dyeing and quilting. I want to share with you a book that I found, and I want to report out on a finished item I have for you in knitting. How amazing is that? I'm looking forward to catching up. Let's get started. This summer, I wanted to try building some skill around resist dyeing, and I got a couple books on Shibori. I was drawn initially because of the stitched technique of creating patterns through stitches. But in this initial experiment, I decided to work with just folds and tie-dyeing techniques just to kind of see what outcomes would be. I am using muslin fabric, which I washed in a pH neutral soap. I did not put a lot of effort into this initial dyeing experiment because I really didn't know much about the techniques, and I wanted to play more than prepare more. I am using an indigo vat from a kit of Jacquard dyes, but I did order for further into the summer, once I build some technique, a indigo vat from Stony Creek Colors. And I am really in an exploratory phase. And again, I often say this is not a tutorial. It's merely an invitation or a demonstration of where I've gone with different skill sets. And so whether it's quilting and stitching that's led me to dyeing and doing my own surface design, that's kind of what this is about. I have been able to access 2 classes on the Long Thread Media site, which highlight different Shibori folding techniques. And I did have to invest a little bit of upfront money in different resist features, such as clamps, clothespins, popsicle sticks, etc. So this had a little bit of an upfront investment that I didn't have already hanging around. I was very lucky, as you saw me wrapping that PVC pipe. My mom had that in the garage, so I nicked that, which saved me some money, so I could try again some of the different techniques. I overall really enjoyed this. I have talked before about how I love a reveal. I did not necessarily always know how the fabric was going to look when I took it apart. I had a general idea of where resist might be, but not the overall experience. The last thing I tried was doing a resist using washable glue. This is highlighted on Jacquard's site and a stencil. This did not work out as well, and I'm going to try again with perhaps a less intense or detailed stencil in the future. So yeah, we have lots of different ways to go with this surface design. Let's go see what the dyeing looked like. Well, yes, there is a finished quilt to talk about. This took me for a bit of a runaround. I had a hard time laying this out, as you can see in this video of me looking very confounded and confusticated, as Bilbo would say. I had a really big struggle figuring out how to place the different fabrics, even though they're in different colors of the same pattern, so they're not all in the same row. In the end, I'm not really sure I achieved it, but I was hot and I wanted to be done. So I put it all together a couple times and laid it out on the floor, which is not ideal, right? And I have been thankful to Karen Brown has a kind of 5 different portable design wall features and hacks. And I think I'm going to be putting up a flannel sheet on a wall in my bathroom or something, because this is not my favorite experience. Even if I was 20, I don't think this would be my favorite experience. So in the end, I did get it all laid out, and I have to sew this in rows lengthwise. So you don't actually put the block together and then sew it. You sew each row and then sew it to its mate on the next row. This is the Ballerina quilt by Jaybird Quilts. I'm doing it in the Wild Coast fabric, and I did a twin size. It's very large. And I will be having this one quilted by the Long Armor. We've had a very exciting and unexpected announcement that has influenced my quilt decision-making. My brother's family is expecting their 3rd child. I will be an aunt again in February. And so I immediately went and picked out a baby quilt pattern and fabric. I am so excited to be working with these types of fabrics again. I am going to be doing this chevron quilt. I'm hoping it will go lickety-split in a baby size, and looking forward to meeting our new member of the family in the winter. Scraps have been on my mind. I really love the fabrics that I have in my scrap stash and wanted to work with them again. These are an amalgamation of my garment sewing, my grandmother's stash, past quilts, and I needed a way to pull them together that didn't require a significant amount of planning. I found this economy block foundation paper piecing tutorial on Tiny Orchard Quilts, and I loved that it allowed me to do a little bit of fussy cutting and storytelling with the fabrics I have, but I didn't have to be precise. That word comes up a lot here in the quilting. So I didn't have to recut fabrics or work with pieces that were awkward. I just needed to fit them onto the paper. She has a really wonderful tutorial and free downloads for all these different blocks, ranging from 2.5 inch up to 6 inch. I'm working with a 5.5 inch here, and I also worked with 4.5. This led me to explore other foundation paper piecing string quilt patterns, and I'm going to talk about that next time because I have a big project planned for that. But in the meantime, I've really enjoyed creating these little tiny stories using fussy cutting and framing. I find it hard to pull from different fabric lines when I'm ordering online, because it's hard to know the colors. But when you go into your scrap stash, it's easy to see how everything can come together. So I am making these blocks like mad in the evenings after dinner and really enjoying the creative process of that. as I've expanded the different ways that I want to work with wool fiber and textiles and quilting and stitches, I found this book, The Homemade Getaway, and I wanted to share it with you because I felt like it compiled a lot of different projects, which I've featured here on this channel, and it's a great way to get some instruction and patterns to get started or try things out. This particular book targets going away and having retreat, and it includes a number of organizational charts that you can use to do that. But as you can see, there's lots of little projects which you can use for scraps, both with stitching and surface design. It includes how to do group projects, so that, cleaning your machine, journal covers. It also includes patterns for the alphabet, that is patchwork and piece. And I thought that was helpful to have on hand. And like I said, it includes that in the book. What drew me to it was this foiling technique, and I want to give that a try. I also like that it has a number of different levels of projects. So you have bags and notebook covers and needle cases. It has, I think, 3 different quilts. And again, a great way to use up scraps, beautiful photography. It does have an activity which features cyanotype projects, and so different ways to use that. I wanted to just highlight this for you because I felt, like I said, it pulled together a lot of these different skills and you might be interested in it. I hope you enjoyed the creative vignettes at the beginning of this episode. I am finding more and more that I like to have multiple formats for highlighting what's been happening here. And one of the things that I do find difficult is communicating and highlighting and talking about my knitting in that kind of narrative style. So you get me in person for the latter portion of this episode. I'm so happy you're here. I'm sure I've already said this. Thank you so much for the investment of time and finances. Those of you who are patrons make it is very encouraging and inspiring to receive funds to continue this work. So thank you so much for making this happen and compensating me for that effort. Right, let's talk about the knitting, because there's something that is finished. Can you believe it? The Cardin by Jennifer Wood is finished. I hope I have some video that I can insert for you here. I'm not really in the space to put it on. It's very hot. Here in the Northeast, in Maine, we've been experiencing some very high temperatures that make it uncomfortable to put on wool. I am not a summer gal. I really like the winter and the fall. I like to be slightly cold. But this is finished. I knit this out of my hand-spun 3-ply from the Flat Island Fleece, which you can find from Starcroft Fibers here in Maine. I made no modifications to the front or the back of the body, but I did knit the sleeves at my own gauge. So I like to have a wider cuff, and I like something to accommodate my upper arms with more of a loose fit, more positive ease. So I decided not to do as many decreases as recommended in the pattern. And I also did not make the cuff as long as she has designed it for. And you might remember in the last episode I was chatting about whether I should do a garter stitch or a rib, and I was worried about the amount of fiber I had or the amount of yarn that was hand spun, and so I opted to do this 2x2 ribbing. And when I first put this on, I was concerned. It was not behaving, the fabric wasn't behaving the way I wanted it to, the way I thought it would, which was to be kind of structured and kind of sit out from the body. And I blocked it real hard, nice good block, and I was able to achieve that, thank goodness. So I think this piece is going to be a real stunner this fall, and you can see here at the bottom, that it is kind of holding out its shape and getting that structure from the cables and the 3-ply. And this is knit top down. I don't know why in the world it took me so long. There are a couple friends who want to remind me that it is cables, and cables do take more time, which is true, but I was knitting on like a US 9. So anyway, it's finished. I thought it was a really well-written pattern, enough cabling to kind of keep you interested. It's bulky. It should technically go much quicker than it went for me. And I think that the shape on this is real, what's the word I'm looking for? I like the way that this uses cables in a creative way to shape and form the body. So yeah, so that's done and ready for potentially a canoe trip coming up in August. Always need wool in the evenings here in Maine, and so I think that this deserves a little maiden voyage on Chamberlain Lake in the Allagash. So what did I cast on? Well, it took me a while to cast something on. My brother's family came with their 2 children, my niece and my nephew, and as you may have learned already, there is a 3rd on the way. I'm going to be an aunt again, and I couldn't be happier. I was definitely a bit shocked, but once that wore off and the anxiety about all of the making, when I got the news, I remember turning to Rob in a full-blown panic, about all of the things I have to make, sweaters and pajamas and quilts. And so I've tempered that, as you saw, I'm just gonna start with a baby quilt and we'll move on from there. Anyway, they all came, and my niece and my nephew and I did a lot of projects, which included some of the Shibori dyeing with the indigo vat. We did gel printing, we did bookmaking, and so I was really caught up in that, and at the end of the day I was quite tired when I sat down with my s'more at the campfire. So it took me a while to cast on some projects, but once I did, I don't know, it was like magic fingers. I really put some dent into the first project that I cast on, which is the Moonlight Meadow by Melody Hoffman. And I talked about what I was going to do a couple episodes ago, and thinking about what I would use for yarn, what I would use for the color work, and I decided upon sticking with two of my original thoughts. The first one is I am still going to use this cone of Navajo churro, and I got this years ago, and I know nothing else about it. I don't know where it was spun. I do know that it's from Maine, and it was spun in a smaller mill, but that's really all I know. And I was looking for complementary colors for the color work in it, and I'm working with snow-capped yarns. I think I've been calling this Old Salt, and then I found a label that said snow-capped. Anyway, I found these at the Net Loft in Alaska, in Cordova, Alaska. And this is the Sedge colorway. This is a blue-faced Leicester yarn, DK weight, and I am going back to my Tidal yarns. So this is leftovers from another project that I did, but I really loved the muted tone of this orange. I had another orange I had picked out, but it felt too Halloween when paired with this kind of peaty brown. So this feels a little bit more like a nutmeg spice, and I think it works better in the pattern. So I have done a number of increases. I've done my first round of the color texture, which I'm using the green as the contrast color 2 and the nutmeggy spice as the contrast color 1. And I am going to get ready to do the next round of the color work texture in the green. Now, I'm going to confess, I was speeding through this. Great. in the evening, and then I looked back and I realized I did not complete the color work texture because I did not read the chart properly. And it was not a chart, I'm sorry, it was written directions. So I forgot to do the last portion of that, and I was like, I am not ripping back. So I took a needle and I just wrapped those stitches manually for each of the sections and tied them in the back with a square knot and a surgeon's knot. And that's how I fixed that problem, and I felt much better about it, and I went to bed. And now I'm just powering through this. I am knitting this on a US 8, and I think is that a 5mm or 5.5? And that is the recommended needle size. I am getting 5 stitches to the inch, which is a little bit more than the gauge recommended, and I am knitting the 3rd size. When I did the calculations of the number of stitches for the chest measurement, it was going to come out right around a 44, and so I was comfortable with that as far as, you know, being an outer layer, etc. So working away on that. The other thing I decided to do is Sophia Camaborn published her puzzle shawl knit along, and my friend Nicole and I were talking about that, and it kind of motivated me to participate. So I have cast on the first clue, and mostly what I spent a lot of time doing was deciding what yarn I was going to use. And I had 2 yarns picked out. The first one was a Tidal Yarns, and I picked up this color and fingering weight a couple years ago at New Hampshire Sheep and Wool. And then I have Tamar from Blacker Yarn when they first released this yarn. And I decided I wanted to knit the Curiuna, which was a shawl that was done as a knit along for Knit My Way Home with Loretta and Natalia on their podcast in the Yukon. They gifted me that pattern, and I think I want to use this beautiful Tidal Yarns for that because I have about 1,000 yards. And the puzzle shawl requires just about 700, so I figured that's basically what I have of this Tamar, maybe a little bit more. So I would, you know, use the yardage that I could get the most bang for my buck. So anyway, I've cast on the first clue, which is basically the garter stitch tab in the Tamar, and that is sitting here ready to go. Now, you may remember I do actually have other works in progress that include the Frokengard pullover that I'm doing from Kofteboken, and I also have another Sophia Camaborn cowl, which I can't remember the name. Is it the Trondheim cowl? Can't remember the name of the cowl now, that I am working on. So I'm working on the hem of the Frokengard. That is slow and steady. And I think when I was invigorated, having finished the Cardin, and then how much progress I made on this Moonlight Meadow, I thought, I want to go for a win on that Moonlight Meadow and see if I can power that out this month and be done with it, and then go back and revisit my fox sweater, which is requiring, you know, it's small stitches, thin yarn, and it's the marathon for me because I still have to do the sleeves. Ugh. Anyway, so I'm just feeling really invigorated with this sweater by Melody and the potential for a shawl. I've been hankering for a shawl. I've been thinking about my other projects. So knitting has kind of come back into my radar, even though the temperatures have been a little bit hot. But I think that getting off the needles, starting something new, that was just what I needed to push through and get excited about knitting again. Right, so that being said, that's the knitting. I thought I would share with you a couple of things that I brought into the studio that have been inspiring to me, that I just find joyful, and have some plans for in projects coming up this fall and winter. The first one is my mom purchased me this Charlie Harper Fat Quarter bundle. This is the Vanishing Birds bundle, and I wanted to put together a quilt of birds. I'm not like a birder. I do enjoy seeing birds. I love getting out. I can identify quite a few in my range here, and I get excited about them, but I'm not getting up at 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning and learning all the calls and doing that type of study. But I do have a penchant for birds and birding and those that are here. And so this kind of really spoke to me, and I thought I would really love to do a quilt with that. And so my mom picked this up for me as a thank you for supporting her during her surgery. So some of you have asked and sent best wishes. Thank you so much for my mom. She did have hip replacement surgery, and the first day was a bit dodgy, but by the third day we were in the clear, and she was feeling much better, super motivated. She's been a star in rehab and is back driving, walking. Well, she was walking the first day, but being very independent. And I know you'll be looking forward to this, she's decided to try counted cross stitch. So stay tuned for a little Sue Hunt moment coming up this fall, and we'll talk to her about her experiences with counted cross stitch. And mind you, when I say counted cross stitch, I don't mean like a tiny little like snowman, just try it out project. I mean like a full-blown like sampler. So I often wonder where I get some of that kind of, I don't know the word I'm looking for. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Not gumption, but kind of like all for nothingness, and you kind of saw it in that Orkney quilt, like, I'm gonna get back into quilting and knit all the and quilt all these compasses and blah, you know, circles. And so when she initially showed me that project, I was like, but then I said, you know what, if that's what you want to do, I'm sure you'll figure it out. You take it one bite at a time and you'll get it done. So stay tuned for the Sue Hunt counted cross stitch adventure. So I'm really excited about that fat quarter bundle, and I'm just enjoying it. The other thing is, earlier this summer, I joined the Pinwheels Japanese Taupe Club, and you get, I can't remember, is it 5? 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's a lot. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 Japanese taupe fat quarters per month, and I think it's $25, and I just was looking for something that would be a little bit inspiring each month, that shows up, and this was perfect. And I love these fabrics, and I'm super inspired by Yoko Seito's work and want to do more of that. I would love to do a Japanese taupe fabric quilt for our bed, so I'm just enjoying this collection experience with these particular fabrics, almost so that I don't want to cut into them. I know Karen, I can't remember her last name now, of Just Get It Done Quilts, has a video on cutting into precious materials, and that's what these feel like. I feel like Gollum with these, like, my precious, like, and I don't want to let them go or be separated from them. No, I'm just kidding. So hi, Rube Dog. So so these are coming monthly, and you get a variety. Obviously we had a darks and now a light, so we'll see what happens next month. And they've been really helpful over there at Pinwheels. I'm looking around. I think I've covered everything that has to do with kind of fiber and the haul. I showed you that book I recently acquired. I have some more things to share in the upcoming month. If you're a patron, you can learn a little bit more about some of the other goings on here. I post a bonus video. Sometimes it's short, sometimes it's a little longer, but it's a little bit more in-depth or highlights a project that I'm working on over on my Patreon site. Okay, it's time for lunch. It's obviously time for a Ruby romp. I hope wherever you are that you are in good spirits, and I will see you next time. Happy trails. Bye.